So this is Spirit of Health Store Training, and we're going to start in the herbs section. And the reason we're starting in the herbs section is because this is kind of the foundation of what we believe. We believe God created everything beautifully and perfectly. Herbal medicine is all that's been available for thousands of years. It's what people have used for thousands of years for healing their bodies. Use plants that God has created. So we're going to kind of start in the bulk herbs section. You know, we have 120 some different bulk herbs. Eventually, at some point, you're going to want to know, 2 or 3 things about what every one of these herbs do. I love herbs and herbal medicine because it works and it's natural. And obviously, we know there's a bit of a dichotomy going on now between quote-unquote natural medicine and modern medicine. And I just thought I want to give you a couple of tidbits on why herbal medicine's so important and why it works as opposed to a conventional medicine. I think one of the foundational things to understand is God created everything, and so He created everything with intelligence. And so He created us. Our bodies has cells that has intelligence. He created plants. Those plants all have intelligence. Everything that God created has an intelligence to it that God made. The more man manipulates it, the more the intelligence kind of disappears out of it. So here's a way to explain it. You take an herb or a plant that God created, and that plant knows what to do in the human body because God created the human body and God created the plant. Make sense? So if we know milk thistle works for the liver, if we know stinging nettle works for the kidneys, if we know these different herbs work for different things, how do these herbs know how to work when they enter the body? Because they were made by God, because they have intelligence. So that is going to be healing based on an exchange or an exchange of information between things of God. Does that make sense? So when man manipulates things and makes pharmaceutical drugs, for example, most of them are coal tar based. They're actually changing the molecular structure of oil or coal tar out of the ground, and they're breaking that down into different components to mimic different things in nature. So what happens when you use pharmaceutical drugs or conventional medicine, the molecular structure of things is manipulated in a way for it to force an action on the body. So when that pharmaceutical drug enters the body, they've done all these tests that show when you take this compound, it's going to force a change in your body whether you like it or not. In other words, no intelligent forcing something to happen on the body whether it likes it or not. As opposed to an herb, which has that natural intelligence and it just heals things or balances things because of that information that's present within the plant. Does that register? And you guys ask questions if you have any questions. But we want to use things that God made that heal the body naturally, not things that are man-made that force and manipulate actions on the body, whether you like it or not. So why that blood pressure medication seems to work is because it manipulated something in one of your blood vessels, some enzyme that works in your body, some protein structure that works in the body, your nervous system. It manipulated something in your nervous system to force it to do something, whether it liked it or not. So that's why it seems to work or to help. But the reason they all have side effects is because they're all man-made and they're all toxic to the human body. They're not bringing balance and healing to the body. They're forcing something to happen on the body. So that's why sometimes pharmaceutical drugs seem to work, but they're never a long-term healing solution. Whereas herbs are going to bring healing, health, and restoration to the body long-term. I always like to say that herbs have side benefits. They don't have side effects. So when you see those side effects on pharmaceutical drugs, that's because those things happened to real people. And usually, a lot of times, those are really horrible, damaging different sicknesses and diseases and sometimes even death that happen to real people, yet they're still allowed to be sold in the store or sold on the market, which is pretty frightening. So herbs aren't going to have that problem. You still have to be intelligent about using herbs and know which ones are nutritious, which ones are stronger medicine, which ones are toxic to the human body, so you really want to avoid them or at least only use small amounts and know how to use them. So we really want to know how to use these, and I'm starting with the herbs section because when we go through these different sections and we talk heart, or we talk blood pressure, or we talk whatever, there's always going to be, almost always going to be herbs involved. Because this is Genesis 1:29. This is all seed-bearing plants that God gave us for food, but He also gave them to us as medicine. As He talks about in Ezekiel and He talks about in Revelations, that the leaves of the trees are medicine. So this is a foundational understanding, because when you look at these herbal formulas and you want to know what they do is based on these herbs and how these herbs work. And so are herbs the only thing that God uses to heal people? Of course not. So we have the ultimate, we have faith, we have Jesus Christ, we have the laying of hands, that trumps everything. But God has sunshine, He has fresh water, He has minerals that are come out of the earth, and He has herbs and He has plant medicine. They're all God, they all work, and we don't promote one over the other. We promote God. We promote and we honor God for everything that He's created, and the fact that He created us, only He can heal us. So we're going to go ahead and move on, but I just wanted to give you that brief introduction of herbs. I'm not going to go through each herb and what they do, but those are things that you're going to learn over time, and you're going to want to know, like I said, 2-3 bullet points on what each of these herbs do. And we'll have a little book, that you guys can look through, that people can look through, some herb books up here as well. Any just general questions about herbs or herbal medicine? I mean, we could talk a long time about it, but I just wanted to kind of give you that brief introduction. No, I don't have question askers. Yes? Yes, my dear?
Will the herbs say whether they were wild-crafted or organic on the canisters?
She asked if the herbs will be marked wild-crafted or organic. What we know is that we only get herbs that are wild-crafted or organic. That could change. Depends on the source. It depends on the time of year. Depends on the quality of growing season. Sometimes organic, sometimes wild-crafted. We actually prefer wild-crafted. Why? I would rather have oregano that's growing in the wild in the mountains in Turkey over some guy in an organic farm babying the plants, taking care of it, spraying it with fertilizer all day. That's, not toxic fertilizer, but still baby. The more you baby and take care of a plant, the less strength it has in the plant. So the strongest herbal medicines are going to be ones that grow out in the wild, out in nature. So we actually prefer wild-crafted. So like if you went out to the woods and picked your own dandelions, that's going to be ideal, the wild-crafted herbs. Any other questions? Okay, so as an example with these bulk herbs, people are going to come in, they're going to want to buy herbs. So let's say they're going to want to buy ashwagandha, for example. Ashwagandha is a root, and it's a powder, the form that we have. All the herbs in the bulk section are either going to be powders, they're going to be cut, or they're going to be whole. Okay, so a powder is the herb ground into powder form. How do people use powders? Powders, they might use it to make a tea. They might throw it in just a drink or a smoothie or food. People might extract it and make a tincture out of it. There's multiple uses for the powder, but the powder is just whatever the plant is ground up into a dried powder form. Cut is usually going to be it's not a powder, it's actually like pieces of the leaf or the root. So like our dandelion root is cut. It's actually pieces of dandelion. The nettle leaf is cut. It's not a powder. It looks like little leaves. It's the leaves of the nettle plant. Chopped. Like chopped. That's a good word for it. Then you have whole. A lot of flowers are going to come whole. Chamomile, it's the whole flower. We have schisandra berries. That's the whole berry. It's not been ground down into a powder. It's the whole plant in its original form. So those are the different forms. There's a few herbs that we have more than one form. We have it in powder form and we have it in whole form. Like schisandra berry, we have schisandra powder and we have schisandra berry whole. Okay, so if somebody wants ashwagandha, for example, right on the canister it's going to say the price. So this is $1.49 an ounce or $23.84 a pound. Now people might say, give me 2 ounces, give me 6 ounces, or they might say, give me $5 worth. And you're going to weigh it at this station right here. So Mike, this is kind of Mike's, one of his main areas, but everybody's going to want to know how to do this. We're going to be busy, and everybody's going to have to help people get the herbs. So the ashwagandha powder, you would just open it, and depending on how much they order, and you're going to have to figure this out. If it's just 2 ounces, it's probably going to be a little bag. But if it's 2 ounces of prunella, which is this big, plant, then it's not going to fit in here because 2 ounces, is a lot because it's kind of a big light plant. So the powders easily can fit in these small ones. You know, if it's 6, 8, 10 ounces powder, probably fit in like the middle size bag. And then if it's then we have the big bags that'll fit like a pound usually. Or again, if it's a cut leaf, this might only fit 6 ounces or 8 ounces of like nettle leaf, for example. So we have 3 different sizes for people to choose from. Probably better to go too big than too small, because if you use too small of a bag, then you got to dump it in another one or make another one. So maybe err on the big side until you start to kind of get the hang of it.
This might be silly, but just share how many ounces in a pound.
16 ounces in a pound. There's 16 ounces in a pound. Now, if somebody wants to buy a pound of a certain herb, we have pounds. Hey, can somebody check that camera and make sure you can see me okay? You can see me? My head's not cut off? Okay. Oh, thanks.
I mean, it's fine, but I'm just...
Okay. So if somebody wants to order a pound, more than likely we have, all our herbs come in pound bags. So if somebody says, I want a pound of ashwagandha, you don't have to measure out a pound into this. We can go grab a pound. And that makes it so much easier. And we have it labeled in tubs, A through E or A through whatever, you know, E through J, whatever. So you can find the whole herb in there if they want 1 pound, 2 pound. When I worked at the health food store in Vegas, I mean, we'd have people come in and order 3 pounds of something, 5 pounds of something. They were buying slippery elm for their horse because the horse had an ulcer, and horses eat a lot. So they were, you know, feeding them slippery elm in their feed to cure the ulcer. So you don't know what people are using the herbs for, but there could be larger amounts that people want to buy. So let's say they're just buying, you know, 4, 6 ounces. You could use a middle-sized bag. We have the scoops right here. Okay, you're going to scoop it, put it in the bag, and this, you're going to zero this scale out. There's an on and off switch under here. You can hit a button to clear it, and everything's zeroed out. And this scale is easy. When you put it on there, it weighs it by the ounce. Okay, so if they ordered 4 ounces, you're going to keep filling this bag, and I'll just do it for fun. So that is 1.6 ounces of ashwagandha powder. So I would just keep filling it until it's 4 ounces. And then,
I would do it if somebody wants $5 worth.
Okay. And then you would just seal it. Okay. And we have a little label thing right here. You don't have to seal. When we ship them, we usually seal them so they know it's not tampered with. But when they just buy them in the store, you don't need to use the sealer. You can just seal them unless they want to for some reason. And then there's little tags right here. You can just write it in pen what it is. And you're going to want to ideally write the price on it, or at least 4 ounces of ashwagandha. Because when we go to checkout, we can put in ashwagandha, quantity 4. Everything in the system is by the ounce. That's how it's set up in the system. Okay, so if they wanted to buy $5 worth, what you actually do is you look, this is $23.84 a pound. What you would actually do is you'd put in 23.84, and when you put it on here, it's going to tell you the dollar amount versus the ounces. Okay, so you put in 23.84. This is a new scale, and so I don't know if this works the same, but I'll put in 23.84. I put it on there. This shows $1.60.
So you don't have to hit something to change the function to do the...
Just if you do nothing, it'll default to the ounce. And if you put in the
price,
dollar amount, it will give you the...
Yep, and I'll confirm that with my dad because this is a new scale. That's how we did it on the other scale. So let me just see again.
Can I come up a little bit? Let me get it. Okay, so it's telling you 3.6.
3.6 ounces, oh, at 23.84. Okay, so no, actually it looks like you might put in the price per ounce. $1.49 an ounce. That's it. 3.6 ounces, $1.49 an ounce, $5.36. You see that makes sense?
Okay, can you do it without putting anything in now?
Okay, so if that all zeroes out, 3.6 ounces.
Okay, so
If I put in 149, it shows 149 an ounce. I put this on there, still shows 3.6 ounces, but it shows $5.36.
we can't see that from here. It's all just a blur.
Right, that's I'm just explaining it. Yeah, I mean you guys can all come up and look at it if you want. But does that kind of make sense? So in other words, if it's totally zeroed out, you put it on, tells you how many ounces. If somebody says, I want $10 worth, you would put in the price per ounce, $1.49. With this bag right now, they're at $5.36. You keep filling it until it shows 10 bucks.
And they're going to pay tax on top of that.
Yeah.
So if they're like, I have a $10 bill, then you might only pay
Tax
like
is
$9.50.
yeah, 7.8 or 7.9%, somewhere in there. Figure not quite 8% for tax.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just I mean, not
that
all
rarely happens. I mean, we
Yeah.
did this hundreds and hundreds of
But
times, and
I'm
it's
just saying, like,
yeah.
you know, they
Yep.
want $10 worth, and I filled it one time like over 10, and then on top of it was tax, and it was like, I'm not, you know, sometimes you have people that are
Yeah.
a little particular. I have another thought.
So what else on measuring and using the bulk herbs? Any other questions about it?
Okay, you said something about the system in Orchid.
Yes.
You do need to know the price, because in Orchid, from my experience, I don't know if your dad has changed it, you put in the bulk, you find the bulk in the bulk bar, and then you put in the price.
Right, we've changed all that. So when we get to the Orchid training, you'll see how to ring this out. You can only do it one or two ways. If they ordered 6 ounces, you're going to pull up ashwagandha. It's going to show the price per ounce. You're going to put in 6. It's automatically going to tabulate it. If they say $10 worth and you got them $10 worth, you're going to put in ashwagandha, and you're going to override where it says cost, and you're going to type in $10.0010. That's the only way you'll enter these.
So
Okay.
you have the option to put in the price or the ounces on the register.
Right, you can override the price, or you can just put in the quantity based on the price per ounce.
So
Does that make sense?
You have to have the ounces on the thing.
Yes.
And you need to have the price, whatever you're
Right, so the
comfortable
label,
with.
when you write ashwagandha or they write ashwagandha on here, either needs to say how many ounces or what the price is. Otherwise, we don't know how to ring it up.
And there's, I mean, no harm in putting both, you know, so that way they feel
Writing
comfortable
it on
too.
there, yeah.
Right,
There's no harm in writing both.
Sure.
because You can see what's there.
sure. And, you know, as with everything in the store, we have 120 some bulk herbs right now. If everybody's coming in and asking for whatever and we don't have it, let's make sure we know that so that we can bring that in.
So would it be beneficial at some point for you and I to just, I could just sit here and just like one night, you just name top top three uses for acai juice, top 3, what would you use for those things, and then we just make a book
Yes, we can totally do that another time.
another time.
Yep.
Okay, and then that'll be available to you guys behind the register, and
That's
it'll be
great.
like a little flip chart.
Yep. And now the sooner the better. And you know, Mike, because that's his section, I kind of put this on him. We're going to have, you know, especially in the beginning, we're not going to be overly swamped. And so we want to start putting together just a one-pager, and you can find all kinds of information on the internet. To find a one-page information sheet with the herb, the Latin name, historical uses, and benefits from it, oh my gosh, you can probably do that in an afternoon for all these herbs and find these little one-pagers. So this information is all over the place. And then you just need to put together a book. And same thing, you could read through those and you could highlight, you know, just like the keys to each one, or however you want to do it.
Well, then if Mike's okay with doing that, then I would just have Mike do it, because we have a lot of other
Yeah.
things.
Right.
we're doing.
I can do
Yep.
that definitely.
Yep,
And that would help me as I'm doing it, learning.
To learn,
Exactly.
that's what I was thinking, yeah.
exactly. Yep. Now you're going to learn so much about these herbs when we get into the sections. Because we're going to look at a kidney formula and we're going to say it's got this herb, this herb, this herb, this herb, and this herb. Why? So you're going to learn, you know, you're going to learn why we talk about the products. So you're going to learn it both ways. You'll learn what the herbs do, and you're going to learn what it does by looking at the products and talking about the health conditions.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'd like you to explain a little bit, like if someone comes up and they buy an herb, and let's say that they heard that this is good for pregnancy, they want to know how to create their tea.
Okay.
What are your general basic instructions for most
Oh,
people?
great, great. I'm glad you asked that. Wow, she asked good questions. Who's this? So she asks how they make teas. Usually with powders. With powders, people will just throw it in a shake or a smoothie or food. You can put powder in a cup of hot water, but it's going to be gritty, and you're going to drink the herb, and that's not a big deal. I do that all the time. I don't care. Some people don't want the gritty weirdness of it. If you buy the cut form, which is like usually a flower, like I said, nettle or marshmallow roots cut. If it's a flower or a leaf, It's called an herbal infusion, and that is where you put it in hot water and steep it like a quote-unquote tea. Now, tea is actually a plant, the tea plant, black tea, white tea, green tea. That's the tea plant. People call these teas. They're not really teas. They're herbal infusions. Well, we can educate people on that, but you can use the word tea. It's not a big deal, but sometimes that's confusing to people. So again, if it's a powder, you can use it in a tea. It's going to be gritty. You can just drink it, or a lot of people throw them in shakes or smoothies or food. Cut, you want to boil, bring water to a boil, add the herb, and let it steep for until it cools. It could be 10, 15 minutes, whatever, until it cools. And so that's where we're going to need the little tea balls, the little reusable tea bag, something to actually make a tea. Of course, people can buy boxed tea as well, but a lot of people will use these for teas. The other way you make teas is roots. So anything that's a root or a bark, pau d'arco bark, dandelion root, burdock root, these need to be boiled in water, in like boiling water, for 10 to 15 minutes to fully extract the properties of the plant. Now, when we get into herbal tinctures, that's already been done for you. So that's the nice thing about different types of tinctures, is they've already extracted all the nutrients out of the plant into a liquid form. With a hot, quote-unquote tea, hot water extraction, you're basically doing that. You're extracting constituents of the plant out of the hot water and drinking the tea. You think of peppermint, right? People got their peppermint tea, and they put the peppermint tea in the little ball and, you know, put it in their boiling water. So that's peppermint tea. But again, dandelion or other roots you want to actually boil for 10 to 15 minutes. Take it off, then let it steep, and then drink it. It's harder to extract nutrients out of roots than it is the flowers or the leaf of the plant.
How long do you steep the flowers, and how long do you steep the roots? The roots you boil for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you just drink it when it cools. Steep. Oh, okay, so just have to steep after that.
Nope. And then, and another way you can do roots and things is you can actually put it in water and just let it sit overnight. That's a common thing. No, and you wouldn't have to necessarily boil it. You might bring it to a boil the next morning. That's how I actually recommend a lot of the teas that I make personally, is I have people put it in water overnight, let it sit overnight, bring it to a boil the next morning, and then drink it. And when it sits overnight, the longer it sits, the more it's going to extract out of the plant, the nutrients out of the plant. And so if it's a cut or a flower, you just boil the water, you put the herb in there, and you can drink it when it cools. It extracts pretty fast. You're welcome. Do you have any more questions? Natanya.
Do you, for the flowers and stuff and the leaves, can you you're letting it steep and stuff, do you have to have it in like a tea bag or can you just throw it in and then just like, keep it in there or just strain it out?
Yeah, however you want to do it.
It doesn't matter if
Yep.
there's a little bit of leftovers.
No, that's not an issue at all. I mean, she asked if you have to strain out all the leaves or if you can strain out a different way. Just like the powder, if you get a little bit or eat a little bit or you drink some nettle leaves, I mean, this is food. You know, some of it's strong medicine, but a lot of it's just food. Nettle, it's food. People ate nettle. You know, you grew up on the wild prairie, you ate nettle. It was part of your food supply. So again, we're not used to these things. We're like, oh, could I eat that? I mean, yeah. I mean, it's food. Rose flowers. I mean, yeah, it's just preference. That's exactly it. It's basically personal preference.
Are you going to have reusable tea bags over here, or are they just in the
We have reusable tea bags over there that we probably should put over here. We should probably have them in both places. And I haven't bought any, but we need to buy some of those little tea balls, you know, those little tea things. And I can get those. I just hadn't thought of it. So if you could write that on the list, that'd be great. So anything else for teas, and we'll move on to a section.
I'm wondering about using all of these as a salve. Would there be a particular method for, because I know Dottie talked about that a lot. Is there a particular protocol that we would tell the customers?
Yeah, she asked how we'd use it as a salve. I mean, in general, there'll be people that come in that are herbies. That's kind of the fun term for them. They're herbies. They know their herbs. They know how to make liniments and poultices and, different things to treat themselves. The general person doesn't. They'll mainly just throw it in a smoothie or they'll make a tea out of it. The vast majority of the people. So to answer your question, for most people, we want to refer them to a product that's already been done.
Right.
Dottie's stuff, you know, some of the healing salves, those things are awesome. They work great. Now, if somebody, you know, really wants to make a poultice or something to put on their arm, we can kind of show them how to do that. I'm not an expert in that for sure, but basically you can just get a cotton or some kind of a wool cloth or a linen, and you just put you know, some herb, like powdered herb, or you can even make a tea out of it. You could boil the herb and take the tea and put it on there wet, and then just wrap it, you know, and that's a way to just apply it topically. And so Dottie mentioned mustard packs, for example, that people used to use for major bronchial conditions that would cure like major bronchitis and things like that. Same thing. You could, yeah, you'd spread it on there, and you know, and make sure it doesn't touch the skin. So there's kind of an art per se to doing that. So we probably won't get into that a lot, because either people are already going to know how to do it, or they're probably just going to stick with the basics. Easier. If people really want to learn how to do that, you know, we just have to do some classes on it or something.